Good evening and welcome to our first regularly scheduled meeting, November 1st. We are reconvening our meeting as we had made a site visit out to Sunset Lake Road, and we do know that the meeting has been officially warned. I'd accept a motion on the minutes for October 18th.
Move to approve the minutes of October 18th, 2011.
Any additions, corrections, deletions? Seeing.
Just one. Guy who was present was Jason Henske, not Houski. He was representing the fire department, the fire truck apparatus company.
Okay.
Henske. That's it. Otherwise, sterling minutes.
Okay.
Sterling.
All right. And that is in line 18. Seeing no other corrections, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, 4-0. Chair's remarks, a few. Our year from you-know-what continues with the fire on the high-rise early Friday morning. Our condolences go to the Franklin family, lady who lost her life there. We are very fortunate that the sprinkler system worked, the alarm system all worked, and that was our only casualty there. Again, our fire department and other supporting departments, the rec department, all did an outstanding job. And residents of the high-rise were also very helpful in evacuating their neighbors out of the building. And what would be any different than Saturday evening, a record historic snowfall, which brought us 15 inches of snow, tree damage, significant tree damage, power outages. I think that we're all back in power in Brattleboro and feeling very fortunate about that, as surrounding towns, not only in the state, in Vermont, but Massachusetts and Connecticut are without power. I'd like to thank Dora for her work on cleanup day, leading the cleanup effort. She did significant work out in West Brattleboro, and wanted to acknowledge her as leading the group, and thank you very much for doing that, Dora. And I'd also like to let people know that our town manager was recognized by BDCC with their Founders Award, their highest award, and it was given to our town manager. I was fortunate enough to be there at the presentation, and for how outstanding work in the most difficult of years here in Brattleboro. So congratulations to you, Barb.
Thank you.
That's about all I have here today. Do you have any remarks?
Nope, I think you covered pretty
Okay.
much everything.
Public participation is an opportunity for you to speak about something that is not on our agenda. If you would come up to the microphone, we'll give you about 2 minutes to speak. And again, as long as it's not on our agenda, if it is, then I'll just cut you off and you'll have to wait your turn until it comes up on our agenda. And please state your name and the town that you're from.
I'm Sandy Harris. I'm from the town of Vernon. I'm the town clerk, but I'm also, this year, I'm the vice president of the Vermont League of Cities and Towns Board of Directors, and I'm just here to observe.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I also, excuse me, I'd like to acknowledge Tim. Tim is stepping down along with Larry Smith.
No, I'm not stepping.
You're not stepping down, you're just, your role?
I'm going to keep on keeping on. I'm not dead yet.
Okay. But you're Kelly Corbeil and Mr.
Yes.
Morris are...
If I may?
Sure, please do.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members. Tim Johnson from WTSA, and I live here, but I sleep in Vernon. Also very involved with Project Feed the Thousands, and Just very, very pleased that the tradition has continued. In case you had not seen or heard the press reports, co-founders George Haynes and Larry Smith have stepped aside. My boss at WTSA, Kelly Corbeil, and Jeff Morse, the chief officer at River Valley Credit Union, are the new co-chairs for the campaign. Now, given everything with Irene and the economy, it's going to be a very, very tough year, particularly because the organization did not meet its financial goals of last year. That put additional stress on the Brattleboro area drop-in center's mission of helping people in need. The campaign will officially kick off on November 18th, and we appreciate anything that anyone can do to help raise food and raise cash for people who so desperately need it. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Okay. We have nothing as liquor commissioners, water and sewer commissioners, unfinished business, new business. We have a public hearing and a presentation.
That is
And
right.
so, do we want to have the presentation before we open up the public hearing, which I think we should?
Sure. Steve?
Steve?
Oh, you want to come
Yes.
up and join?
Join
Rick?
Scott.
Oh, do we need,
This is- This is Scott.
this is on, earlier this evening, as the chair said, the board went to Sunset Lake Road to look at that first bridge there on Sunset Lake. We were notified last year about, well, actually this year, I guess in January or so, that the, that bridge was in, which has been in pretty rough shape, had made it kind of its way to the top of the worst list. And so this, it had gone to, the state was going to put this on for preliminary design and engineering. This evening, the, as by protocol, the board did a site visit with representatives from Van S. Hangen, who is the engineering firm who will be doing the work on this project. Also, at that site visit, there was a representative from V-Trans, and I'm sorry, Mike Schneck, who is also, who was with V-Trans, was there. And what they did is they went over kind of where they're at. Just so folks are aware, this is still, they're in doing the kind of the preliminary design, and that's what we're going to be going over. We're getting public input. Notices went around to those folks living in that area on the Sunset Lake, kind of abutting that property. And also at the representative town meeting in this past March, funds were approved for the town's contribution. This would be 80% federal funding, 10% state, and 10% local match. So with that, we'll kick it over and have another, just a presentation on what's going to actually happen there on that road and how we're going to get up Sunset Lake Road when that bridge is out of commission.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Scott Burbank from SA and Russell VHB, excuse me. And this is the Brattleboro Alternatives presentation and local concerns meeting for Sunset Lake Road, bridge number 7 over Holiday Brook. And we are here today to talk about, basically get your input as the public, what are your concerns, as well as present the preferred alternative that we think should be the replacement for this structure. Thank you. We're all set. All right, so as I said, I'm Scott Burbank with VHB. That's Mike Chenette. He's the V-Trans project manager. First, I think we should go over the, just to refresh everyone, the project development process. According to V-Trans, there's the project definition phase, which is, that's what we're in right now. The next phase after this is the project design, which is where we, as engineers, like to get, to design stuff. And then the final phase is construction, which is where you want to get. So we can get this open, prepared. The project definition phase, project scoping, we have site investigations, alternatives study, alternatives presentation and local concerns meeting, and we're here now. The next after this is the conceptual design, and then lastly, as part of the project definition, we do permitting, so that would be stream alterations, any other environmental permits that we would need. Site investigations, that would include surveying. I don't know if anyone noticed, we had flags out there designating ordinary high water and top of bank, as well as going out there and doing topographic survey. The other thing we did was the utility identification in terms of overhead utilities as well as sewer and water in the ground, gas, existing conditions documentation, and that would be the condition of the current structure right now. And then last would be, or not last or least, but environmental resource identification. The survey was completed by us, VHB, and as far as utility identification, the overhead utilities were located during the survey, and there are no known buried utilities on Sunset Lake Road. Existing conditions documentation, the concrete bridge deck and bridge railing, we look at that, as well as the superstructure, which are the abutments. Those are the things that on either side of the bridge, made in stone, that hold up the superstructure, which is that piece of concrete the railings are attached to. We look at the channel. Does the channel flow in and flow out nice in terms of, is the width correct for the channel? And then the other thing would be the approaches. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of these bridges, they always built them tiny, so you have to sort of neck in when you go over the bridge. Concrete deck and bridge railing condition. Currently, the railing does not meet current design standards. The deck is deteriorated along the east fascia, which is the downstream side. As you can see right here, that's all supposed to be concrete. It's not there. It's deteriorated. And lastly, underneath, we have deck cracking and efflorescence, or E-flow. And what that is when water seeps through concrete, it picks up the calcium, so it looks like white seeping through the bottom of the deck. Abutment conditions. These are the two abutments. I believe the first one is looking south, and the other one will be looking north. They're dry, stacked, loose-fitting stones with several missing stones, a lot of voids in there. But they are doing their job in holding up the structure. The wing walls, the northwest wing wall, which is the one as you're going up Sunset Lake Road from Route 9, it's tilting outwards. It's been doing that for quite a while now. It's still there, and the other thing is it also has loose and missing stones. And then something we discovered that we did not know until Tropical Storm Irene was there used to be earth here, and there's a buttress on this one. So that wing wall seems to be in good shape, other than it's a little lawn missing. The channel. The channel was, again, this was post-troubles, approximately plus or minus 15 feet wide. I think it still is upstream. It's widened a little bit on the downstream side. And the bridge itself is not 15 feet wide. It's around, I think, 13 feet, plus or minus. And then the channel runs along the roadway on the, that would be the northwest side, and then turns and goes under the bridge. Approaches, the roadway, as I mentioned, is wider than the bridge on both approaches, and the ends of the approach railings currently do not meet current design standards. And all that is there's that round piece at the end of the guardrail. It's not correct in terms of what is done today for treating that end treatment. All right, next thing would be environmental documentation. Wetland delineation. We are not affecting any wetlands up there. There is a pond up there, a private pond up there that could be designated as a wetland, but we won't be anywhere near that. Threatened and endangered species review. So we would have someone come out and they would look and see in the area if there's any, we call them RTE, rare threatened and endangered species in the area. And then the last, again, is historical and archaeological review. So looking for native peoples, historic buildings, that type of thing. All right, the alternative study. We do a hydrology, look at the hydrology, and then we determine a hydraulics analysis. We look at the bridge replacement alternatives, traffic control during construction alternatives, formulate a recommendation, and then we come up with a schedule. The hydraulic study. The existing bridge has a 66 square foot hydraulic opening. It's about 13 by 5 feet, give or take, right now. And it currently does not meet the VTrans hydraulic requirements, which are during a 25-year storm event, they would like at least a foot of clear between the underside of the deck and the top of that water, called that freeboard. The next thing would be the 100-year storm. They allow the 100-year storm to pass underneath the deck without overtopping, and currently that does not happen according to the hydraulics. So, continuing on the hydraulic study. The new bridge, we shall have a minimum channel width of 15 feet to match the width of the stream, the brook out there. The new bridge is going to have a 128 square foot hydraulic opening, which is approximately 26 by 5 feet, give or take. And due to the existing conditions of the new bridge, we're going to have to achieve that greater hydraulic opening by lengthening the bridge as opposed to vertical. All right, bridge rehabilitation alternatives. We looked at 3 alternatives. The first alternative is what we call a precast concrete arch. It's basically made of concrete. It has a leg that comes up, arches over, and comes down. We would put that on a new concrete spread footing, a new concrete head wall and a wing wall. The wing walls are the pieces that go out from either side of the arch. In order to achieve that hydraulic opening, we needed a precast concrete arch 36 feet long and 8 feet high. We would also upgrade the new bridge and approach railing as well, new bridge and approach railing. So we put new railing on the bridge as well as on the approaches. The thing about the concrete arches, they require a minimum fill over the top of them. And because of that, due to the skew, because there's a, I don't know if you've been out there, but there's a rather large skew there around 40 degrees, 50 degrees, and also because you have to go 8 feet high, and right now you only have 5 feet high, it wouldn't work so well because of the fact that you literally have you could jump right off the end, or right along. So because of the fact that the height of the thing has to go from 5 feet to 8 feet, you're going to have a bump in the road, and so we discounted this alternative immediately because it doesn't work in terms of what we want to accomplish. Alternative number 2, precast concrete voided slab. That would be a slab that's rather thin, 18 inches deep, that they precast in a plant and they bring here on a truck and you set in place. The slab would go on new concrete abutments and wing walls. As I mentioned, it's 18 inches deep, and we're going to put a 5-inch concrete overlay. So they set these next to each other and then they pour 5 inches of concrete over the top of those boxes. And again, you'd have new bridge and approach railing. Alternative 3 is a cast-in-place concrete slab. Similar concept to the voided box, except rather than producing that or casting that in a warehouse somewhere and driving to the site with it, this you would do on-site. This would also have a new cast-in-place concrete abutment and wings. It would be approximately 30 inches deep versus your 18 inches deep, so almost twice. And it would also have a new bridge and approach railing. So to evaluate the 3 alternatives, the precast concrete arch, we didn't look at a construction cost because we pretty much ruled it out from the beginning. Its advantages, however, are that it has a 50 to 75-year life, service life, accelerated bridge construction, which means you precast it, you bring it on site, and you close the road and you can get it built quickly without a lot of disturbance to the traveling public. Disadvantages, obviously, geometry is not appropriate to the site due to the skew of the river and the road and the height the arch would have to be. Precast concrete void slab, that construction cost is around $1 million. That would also have a 50 to 75-year service life. Also accelerated bridge construction because they pour it someplace else, bring it into the site and set it in place. Minimal superstructure depth, so that would be the depth of it. It's not as deep, and really no disadvantages to that one. Cast-in-place concrete slab, approximately the same, $1 million, same lifespan, 50 to 75 years. Disadvantages include the fact that 18 inches to 30 inches, so you'd have to raise the road a little higher, and then, as mentioned, the deeper construction depth and time, because they'd have to cast it on site, have to cure on site, so it would take a little longer than your precast, which you bring to the site already formed. Traffic control alternatives. 3 traffic control alternatives we looked at. The first one being phase construction. Phase construction is where you build half the bridge here, well, you travel on the old bridge, and then you put the traffic on the new bridge you just built, and then replace the other half with a new structure. The pros are it allows roadway to stay open, so no detour around the site. The cons, however, are introduces traffic to the work zone, extends duration of construction, decreased safety for the traveling public and the contractor because you have that interface between construction vehicles and the traveling public. Over-widening of the bridge because you have to make it wider to accommodate temporary guardrail. As well as it increases project cost because you're making a bridge wider when there's no reason to, and for other reasons, other than the fact that you want to use stage construction. And then jointed construction because you have a longitudinal joint. And joints are bad. Joints are usually where we see failures. And Steve knows. Everywhere you go, there's a joint. Water leaks through. That's usually where your deterioration starts. So anything we can do to minimize a joint in our construction is a good thing. Traffic control alternative. Second one is going to be close bridge to traffic and use a one-lane temporary bridge. Pros are it allows the roadway to stay open during construction. Safer work zone because the traveling public is no longer intermixed with the contractor, but they're detouring around but not way around. They're off-site, construction site. Jointless construction and longer design life because you've eliminated that longitudinal joint. And it allows for rapid construction. The cons are it extends duration of construction because they first have to come in and build the temporary bridge and then start removing the other bridge and replacing it. Temporary traffic signals would be required because it's alternating one-way traffic. This increases project costs, and you need to obtain temporary easements or right-of-way to install your temporary bridge. Last traffic control option would be to close the bridge and detour traffic around the site. So we would close off Sunset Lake Road and then send people around. The pros to that is it's a safer work zone, only local traffic on that road while they're working. Shorter construction because they don't have to build a temporary bridge prior to starting their construction. Again, jointless construction and longer design lifespan because you've eliminated that joint. And also the possibility for rapid construction. The cons are the inconvenience to the traveling public, and it's a plus or minus 20-mile detour and an additional 15 minutes around. So that's your commute. You are not happy.
Well, the other point on that was the emergency services.
And the emergency services, that's a good point too.
Unable to go.
So our preferred alternative that we used, or came up with here, would be alternative 2, which is the precast concrete voided slabs. Pros are smaller superstructure depth, less construction time, and minimal maintenance once the structure is built. Traffic control would be the one-lane temporary bridge, allows the roadway to stay open, access to emergency vehicles. Longer design life allows the bridge to be reconstructed on the existing roadway alignment, so we don't need to, you can go right down the same alignment that the existing bridge is on, and the possibility to do some rapid construction or accelerated bridge construction. And then this is the proposed typical section. So the existing bridge right now is around 20 feet 2 inches out to out. Your roadway from the edge of the pavement to the edge of pavement is around 24 feet. This structure would be 24 feet 8 from the face of rail to face of rail. So we're about 8 inches wider than the roadway is now, and that's just because of the way the voided slabs on the bottom here work out in terms of they only cast these in certain widths, 4 feet or 3 feet. So you basically put them together to accomplish a certain width you want. Since I'm over here, we can talk about the, and this would be, it's going to be a bare deck, so there won't be any pavement on it. It's just going to be concrete. 1'3" curve by 10 inches, and then the guardrail, call that fascia mounted because it's on the side. So what it does is we have to put it up top, we have to make the bridge wider, but by putting it on the sides, we can reduce the width of the bridge and save money doing that.
So it'll never have blacktop or asphalt on it. It'll just be a concrete bridge.
That's correct. Yeah, it'll be bare deck bridge. Project schedule. In terms of project permitting and design, 2011 to 2012. And as I mentioned out there, construction, V-Trans has not put funding towards this project yet, but certainly that can and could happen or will happen. It's just because we're in the project definition phase that we're at that point. But project construction certainly will be ready to go to construction in the 2012, if there's funding available. And I guess it's any questions or comments from the select board or
I don't think at this point.
the public?
Well, when you're finished with your presentation, I'll open the public hearing.
Okay. Good enough.
You're good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will open the public hearing, and actually, before the board makes any comments, I'll ask the public if they have any questions for Scott and/or the board. We did have about 15 people out at the site visit. And if you have a question, if you could actually get up to the microphone and state your name and
David Bell, 127 Sunset Lake Road, just north of the bridge,
Okay, yeah.
the farmhouse. The only question I had, Steve, is the access from our driveway onto the bridge. How far is the rail going to come out? Is that going to
The
be
guardrail would come down and would curve around here.
much like it does now?
Yeah.
So it really wouldn't be any further than it
No,
is right
we'll
now?
just- I think right now, I mean, the surveyors, of course, when they survey, they do lines, so it's not a definite radius,
Right.
but we'd probably put a 5-foot or 10-foot radius
Okay.
and pave an apron
Okay,
onto your driveway.
right.
And I can't remember, is your driveway, I don't remember if your driveway was paved or not.
Yes, it is,
Yeah,
right.
so they just pave an apron onto that, and the guardrail, I don't think it even wraps around, I think it actually just terminates right before it
Okay.
gets to your driveway.
So there's no plan on,
Well,
there's
I'm
no
saying,
plan,
not now, but I'm saying, we will terminate it, so just before it gets to your driveway.
so there's no plan on, for us to have to move our driveway?
No,
Oh,
definitely
okay.
not.
All right. Yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Sam Angel, I'm at 87 Sunset Lake Road, just south of the project. I got a couple questions, Steve. I'm not sure exactly of the terminology of it, but right now, the sort of the superstructure that the bridge sits on is dry stone, and it's got a lot of cultural integrity. And I'm concerned that none of the alternatives that you seem to be looking at are preserving that dry stone foundation, whether it's the wing walls or underneath the bridge itself or even on the north side. That's all dry stone right now. And I think for cultural integrity and historic preservation, I think that's an option that should be considered. And I'm a little sorry that you didn't see it. It sounded like some of the lifespans of the concrete that you're talking about 75 years, something like that, maybe a little less. I think you said 50 to 75 years for one of the alternatives. And I wouldn't be surprised if that dry stone wall wouldn't have at least as much lifespan either. And I'm wondering if you've considered that, if you've thought about it. Some of the wing walls are all dry stone. And it's sad to see a lot of that stuff disappearing in Vermont. I think it's one of the things that makes Vermont a unique place. And to have just, concrete poured in there. I mean, you can see one of the picture that you have up there right now, there is a concrete wall there. But the wing wall on Dave's and Linda's property, on the Bell's property to the north is dry stone, and all underneath the bridge is dry stone. And the wing walls on the north side of the stream there are all dry stone also. And I actually thought they held up remarkably well in Irene. The storm didn't overtop the roadway, which was very fortunate, certainly for us, because we would have had a lot more damage certainly if it was. But I'm just disappointed that that's not seen as an option, and I would ask that it be considered as an option.
Okay. We did do a historical and archaeological review of the site, and I believe they determined that the dry laid stone abutments were not historic. But we can look at that again, just to confirm, and as well as consider that.
So that will be looked at as an option?
Yeah, we'll look into that as far as whether we can use it. I think in terms of structural integrity, however, that the dry laid stone is not going to have the service life or the strength as a concrete foundation would. There's definitely voids in those that you could stick. When we came back, we stuck a rod in 2 feet into one of the voids, and I know there were sinkholes that Steve. So there are some concerns that way in terms of dry stone. It's not the best choice, obviously, as opposed to mortar joints. But anyway, so I think we will look at it, but I don't think there's any historic significance to the dry laid stone abutments as far as that goes. But certainly, I guess, in terms of aesthetics, it is possible to put a form liner on something and make it look like stone, if that's more what you're getting at. But in terms of the actual historical value of the structure, I believe it was deemed not historic. But I'll have to revisit that because I don't have the report in front of me to verify that.
Anyone else from the public?
Just-
Any board members have any questions? Dora?
Well, just to follow up on Sam's question about the dry stone, it'd be nice to be able to have it looked at as to whether or not a mason could do some repairs on that and actually make it so that it could hold that up and last to preserve that.
We'd have to take it apart though, because currently we have to widen the abutments. Hydraulically, it doesn't work. So we'd have to move the abutments. So you'd have to pay to have someone come in and remove all the stones and then build it back up. So in terms of cost versus, that's a rather large cost versus pouring concrete.
Barb?
Just so that it gets on the record, though, the Bedards were at the site visit, and she just made a mention of trying to limit the number of trees that had to come down for the temporary laying bridge. So just so it's on the record.
And there was a stone, right?
There was a
Yeah,
stone.
there's
Oh,
a
and
big
the s-
rock, yeah.
That
Yeah, the
stone at the end
she
that
wants-
she wanted to
They
put
want the
back.
stone put back,
Yep.
right.
And also the sign needs to be put back in
In
concrete.
concrete.
In concrete, so let the record show that several requests were made at the site visit. Any other board members? No. And so I will close the public hearing.
Can I just say, I'm sorry, one more thing, just
Sure.
in terms of,
Before I close
the
it.
cost, it sounds like some of the, most of the cost can be borne by the federal government?
80%.
80% and only 10% by the town, 10% by the state. So in terms of the costs and of looking at it in terms of building a dry stone or, doing something else, it sounds like a lot of that's going to be, not borne by the town. Is that correct?
That's correct. You would pay for 10%.
Only
of the
10%
project
of
cost.
that.
Yep. That is correct.
And this money was approved in this past March's annual meeting as part of the capital plan. So the money has already been appropriated by town meeting members for this project, at least our portion.
What would be the next process then, when you would come back, or when people would have another opportunity to talk about this?
Generally, we'll look at the comments, and I guess as far as the preferred alternative, we've talked with Steve, and I'm assuming he's talked with you, but just to get your approval of the preferred alternative.
You actually need the board to take
Yeah,
a...
you would have to
Oh.
approve the preferred alternative moving forward, and then we would move forward into the design phase.
And you would want that tonight?
I think that's what, right, Mike, you were looking for approval tonight, or we could send you a
If
letter?
possible, tonight or soon. So, we really need that consensus to move forward.
Can you show us the slide on the screen that's got the preferred alternatives so that we can make the motion?
This would be alternative two.
No, the
I
one
think
with
he
the
wants
language.
the one with the words.
With the words, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's it. Thank you. I move that the board endorse recommended alternative to the precast concrete void slabs construction with the traffic control alternative of the one-lane temporary bridge as presented and recommended by the engineers.
Discussion? Dora?
Just a point of order, and that is, this was warned as no requested action, and we did actually tell people at the site that we wouldn't be making any decision tonight, and there may have been people who might have come if they thought we were going to be making a decision on something, so it just doesn't,
Well, my feeling is that there was no opposition in terms of
Well, what they were told
presentation.
was that this is just preliminary, and there really isn't anything, that there's no decisions being made, and that that they're gonna be talking about designs, and it would come back to them, and, just from a sort of the way the public was understanding this when we looked
I don't
at it
think
on the
that would
site.
hamper this project if we waited 2 weeks
No?
for approval? Okay, then, yes. And
Excuse me, Mark Hogan. I work with Scott. I'm Director of Engineering for VHB. And I thought I'd just offer a little bit of input here. The approval of the preferred alternative tonight would be in keeping with just these concepts. There's a lot of opportunity when we submit plans along the way in the future for public input, for town's input to approve each stage. After this milestone, we go to a preliminary plan phase, a final plan phase, and each of those subsequent phases gets reviewed by the town in terms of getting these additional inputs in there. So just to, we can take a look at the stone, but, you're talking 3 to 4 times as much cost for that abutment, and we're competing for a lot of funds within the state. So granted, the town has approved their 10% match for that funding. It
Which
still
would
has to
have
get
to-
in line in terms of the state and federal funding. And as soon as you start adding things like that that are more complicated, more expensive for the length of the bridge. It doesn't necessarily go to the top in terms of getting done. So just a little bit more input there.
Okay. Hearing that, Dora, are you still uncomfortable with voting on the motion?
I am, just because of the fact that we did tell people at the site that there wasn't going to be any decision made tonight, so
Okay, I'll ask David to withdraw his motion, and we'll put this on our agenda for November 17th, I think, our next meeting, whatever date that, 15th, and we'll approve the alternative at that meeting. Okay?
And I apologize, I didn't realize that there was a request for action, and are we gonna, can we get that, the slideshow?
Yeah.
So that then we can have the motion prepared? Doesn't matter, whatever's easiest. Give it to Steve.
Okay, thank you very much, Scott. David, would you withdraw your motion?
Sure, I guess. I don't remember hearing at the site visit that there wasn't going to be any action, and I would prefer to be moving forward, because I think that moving forward would allow this to get into the hopper for approval sooner rather than later, and I think that the condition of that bridge makes this a very top priority to get moving. But if there seems to be some concern about the procedure, I'll certainly agree to withdraw. I think that the interested parties are here, and we really should be moving along, but I guess we can wait 2 weeks if that's what Dora thinks is more appropriate.
Well, I don't disagree with you. I certainly didn't hear anyone other than Sam's concern about the stone. There wasn't anyone out there that, of the 10 or 12 people that I saw, that were not in approval of the meeting, so, but I'm willing to acquiesce begrudgingly, but because there was no action required, small oversight. Christopher?
Yeah, Dora, when did you hear this, and who said what to whom in that regard?
Well, there was a discussion because it was being presented as sort of option, an option, and it was still going into design phase, and there was a lot going on. And I don't think that there was a clear understanding by folks who were there at the site that there was actually going to be a decision made tonight about what those options were going to, on a particular option. My feeling was that, certainly my understanding was that there wasn't going to be a decision made about any of this, that they were just presenting the information just like they did at the site visit. And there were some people who were told that there wasn't going to be a decision made who might have just come to be here for that. So
So you heard somebody say that we were not going to vote tonight on this?
Yeah, there was definitely that came up in the discussion at the site, that there was no decision going to be made tonight.
I think when you heard that, to correct you, it was a resident talking about Holiday Brook Road, and even that's not the reason that that's on our agenda is the update from Steve on the figures that he's going to give us, and there will be no action on Holiday Brook Road. So anyone who is here for that and/or planning to come down, you can come down to listen to Steve's report. But Holiday Brook Road will not be addressed until we enter into the budget season, and we take that up under our capital plan, and then we would be most likely making a site visit. So the words that you heard, not taking any actions, were being specific to a resident who was there for Holiday Brook Road.
That's not what I'm talking about, Dick.
Well, that's the item that I can tell you that I was talking, I did say that we weren't taking any action tonight. So I am willing to begrudgingly acquiesce. I do feel that this is really the same situation that happened with Union Station, that we were going to vote on something and then we ended up having to have a special meeting to vote on Union Station at noontime. But I will acquiesce here, even though there are two board members who don't feel the same way at this point. So, David, if you would begrudgingly remove your motion, I don't want to vote.
I've agreed.
Okay. Your motion's been withdrawn, and we'll put this on the agenda for the next meeting in November. Thank you. We're moving on. No, we're moving on.
All right, next up. Thank you very much. Next up, we have an update. Jane Southworth, who is one of our representatives to the Wyndham Solid Waste Management District, is here to give us an update. Also, I'm sure joining in on that update will be Dora Bupelas, who is the other representative to the district. Many things are happening there. Thanks, Jane.
You're welcome. I am the representative from the town to Wyndham Solid Waste Management District, and Dora is the alternate. And some of you know more about the district than you need to know or want to know, and some probably of the board and the audience don't know much. So I'm going to give a real quick update and history, and then whatever questions we can field. But the district was formed in the late 80s by most of the towns along the river and focused around the landfill. And the district operates as a municipality under Vermont law. Each district has to have a solid waste plan that parallels the state solid waste plan, and the landfill, which the original district was formed around, closed in 1996, and the money from that which helped to finance the district was replaced by assessments from the member communities, which have gone up to 19 from the original 8 or 9. And in accordance with the requirements of Vermont law and the solid waste plan, the district provides educational programs, manages recyclables at the solid waste district materials recycling center, manages trash, construction and demolition materials, used electronics, medical sharps, household hazardous waste, compostables, yard waste, Freon batteries, used motor oil, filters, other automotive materials, fluorescent bulbs, ballasts with and without PCBs, oil-based paint and paint items, and has a volunteer-managed swap shed and now Project Cow. And if you have not been to the district, it's on Old Ferry Road, which is a right turn just past CNS Grocers all the way to the end, and it's worth a visit. The current budget for the district is $1.4 million. Almost $1 million is expected to be received from marketed recyclables, fees, and grants. We've been very lucky in that the market for recyclables has been very good for a number of years. Our current assessment is $145,000. The district has about 10 people on its staff, one administrative person in the office, one in the scale house, 2 truck drivers, and 6 folks in the materials recycling facility. The administration is done by an executive director who, George Murray resigned. We're currently seeking a new executive director. The financial oversight is done by a CPA on contract, and the part-time education program is currently run by Cindy Sterling. Recently, we had questions about how the district had been operating, and so new committees were formed: the policy committee, the planning and operations committee, and the ongoing finance committee. And Dora and I attend most of those committee meetings as well as the district meeting, and I wound up being chair of the policy committee because its current chair became the vice chair of the district, and there were only 2 of us on the committee, so we sort of switched hats. There's a district meeting coming up November 10th, and primarily that will talk about the charter, and the policy committee rewrote the personnel policy committee and personnel policy and then took on rewriting the charter. And so segueing to that, unless there are some questions about the district in general.
The ordinance changes in the charter. Has town council reviewed the changes in the ordinance? And
Ordinance or charter?
well, your charter.
Okay.
You're changing the charter, correct?
Yes,
Yes. And would we be reviewing that to make sure that, what effect that would have on us as a municipality?
I have not reviewed that yet. We can and will do that. So.
Okay, there will be a meeting, a discussion of it this coming next Thursday, the 10th. And if you have comments, it's online. I can send you a copy of the revisions.
It'd be fabulous.
Okay. More?
No, I was concerned about that and
Okay.
having town council review
Okay,
those
great.
changes and how
Just
they might
briefly
affect
about the
us.
charter, the policy committee's been working on it for over a year, and there's been no revision of the charter since the early 80s, except for adding additional towns. We've been working with an eye to waste management in the 21st century and trying to provide services needed without knowing exactly what they might be. The process that we used, the policy committee sat down, read through the charter, which I don't know whether you've read through many charters, but they're not exactly scintillating. And so we read through and looked at other district charters and put in words that, and made changes that we thought appropriate, and came up with a new draft, which we then gave to our board members. After that, we sent the draft to Paul Giuliani in Montpelier, who has been instrumental in writing a fair number of district charters, and he's provided advice and revisions for us. We've had comments from a number of district representatives from Wilmington, Putney, Guilford, and we have made in-house revisions, and so we welcome more. Some of the changes are simple housekeeping changes, like capitalization and changing words. Some of the changes are a little bit more substantial, and I know, as I said, that we can't see into the future, but we've tried to create a flexible and nimble thing for us all to use, and I would welcome a discussion with Bob and anyone else who's interested, and maybe Dora has some things she wants to.
Well, I was just going to say that I think a lot of the work that the policy committee did in the charter was trying to update the charter to make it match what the district does now. It hadn't been updated since it started. It had a lot of language referring to landfill, which isn't open anymore, and just a lot of that kind of stuff. And like Jane said, they tried to make open language. There's still probably going to be some discussion about whether it's enough, but it's a lot of real language changes. It's not. There's from what I've read, there isn't anything substantial that changes, and a lot of things that Paul Giuliani recommended, that's legalese, that he's recommending be put in there.
Okay. Any other board members with any?
Yeah,
Yes.
I had a question. Jane, this doesn't have anything to do with charters and things, but you know that we've had a real effort. The town has funded $20,000 or so for coaching and training and publicity about recycling and the Project Cow and so forth. And I'm wondering if you could give us some perspective on how much capacity there is for increased recycling if people actually get on the wave and recycle more. How much where would the break point be where if we had better, really materially better participation in recycling, at what point would we reach our capacity? Where would Brattleboro be? Would it be at 50% or 60% participation in recycling, or 75, or what? Have you put together an estimate of any
That's a
sort?
little hard to answer because the MRF is 20 years old and suffering from old age, and the move toward what they call single stream. It has been discussed, and we keep looking at whether we should change the MRF from dual stream, which means cans and bottles sorted on one side and newspaper and cardboard and other fiber things sorted on the other side. And if we change to single stream, that means recalibrating the entire facility and shipping stuff off elsewhere to be processed. So the point would then become moot at that point, because you're limited only by how much you can take in and go out. Changes along that line would require fewer workers, but would also, and cost less possibly, but also would bring in fewer dollars. So we've been trying to look at that. The MRF was designed originally for 40 tons a day at 2 shifts, and its limiting factor is not the conveyor belts that take things along, but the storage. Putting in the plastic 3 through 7 has created issues of where you keep a huge, bale of plastic that's waiting to be shipped is, a little bit less the size of this table, and it has to sit until, it doesn't go out until there's a whole truck full. So you have to accumulate a bunch of these things. They can't stay outside because the sun makes the plastic degrade. And so the real limiting factor is not how much you take in, but how much you can and you ship out.
Well, I want to add that one of the big things that we're talking about these days is developing relationships with other districts. So if one district might handle one thing and we might handle another thing, and you sort of share revenues, that's another piece that's been a discussion that's been going on for the last couple of months. So that's another possibility as well.
Yeah, I think we should just push recycling as best we can, because it's a cost savings to the town, and instead of $100 a ton that we pay out, we are able to recycle a product and we don't pay $100 a ton. So I think that the solid waste district, if it keeps getting more and more materials, will have to be flexible and figure out how to deal. And that we should not, as Brattleboro, look at that as a limitation, because I think we are doing better. Project Cow, more people have taken interest and are using Project Cow at Fairground Road. And I want to take this opportunity to say that the headline in the Reformer was wrong. We're not closing it's not closing for the winter. It's only closing on Wednesday. It will be open on Saturdays. I don't know, that's sort of a long non-answer.
So if I were to reflect back to you, it seems that there is nothing really standing in the way of really large increases in participation in recycling.
And I think Moss and Cindy have done a really good job, and we have increased not only the participation, but the numbers have gone up.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Anyone else? Thank you, Jay.
Welcome.
All right, next, Holiday Brook Road. At a prior meeting in, I'm not even sure when, October, I think. October 4th. The board heard a request from citizens Halliday Brook Road to reclassify it from a Class 4 to a Class 3. At that, most of the conversation was actually just to discuss how that process goes, and it was at that time the board directed Public Works Director Steve Barrett to prepare an estimate of costs of what it would take to make improvements to the road from a Class 4 to a Class 3. The board in their packets has those estimates. It's $152,000. And with that, Steve Barrett is here to discuss why it's so high and what work it would take, and then to answer any questions of the board and of the citizens.
Okay.
Mr. Barrett?
Good evening. So the Public Works was asked to look at Holiday Brook Road to see what it would take to upgrade the road from a Class 4, which is not maintained by the town, to a Class 3 roadway that would be maintained by the town, and what would that take, what resources. So our engineering tech went to work on this, and this particular blueprint here is a layout of the road, and it's difficult to see, I realize that, but on the very top portion is a section of the roadway, and on your left-hand side would be the beginning of Sunset Lake Road. And as you follow through, it drops off, and the next section B is the next section of roadway where the homes begin. I've kind of highlighted the orange. And then the last section would be the final driveway in the end of the road. In the area that we're talking about. Starks Road actually goes further in distance. The distance we're talking about here is approximately 4,500 feet. And then Stark Road, of course, goes out further. Holiday Brook Road, I'm sorry. I don't know why I got Stark. I guess I went over that
You
one
went
time
over that
with them.
today.
So that's just a basic layout. And so what this entails is to upgrade the roadway would be to have a roadway that's a minimum of 14 feet wide, and that's the most minimum that you really should have going by the state guidelines. And you would have ditch lines to accommodate the drainage. You'd be upgrading all the drainage. There is very little now, so it would need more drainage. And also, there would be some removal of trees on the side because we'd have to widen the roadway out. At a 14-foot wide road, that would accommodate what they call 25 trips a day. And that would take care of the houses that are there. But if there was some future growth, then we'd have to look at probably having the road about 16 foot wide. Not a lot more, but it would bring more trips per day and would require the road to be a little bit wider. The majority of the cost for the upgrade, where I've highlighted in green, is a buffer zone of about 4 feet on the outer edges of the right-of-way, and that's where trees and stumps would have to be removed. There's a fair amount of that activity that would have to happen. And then the other work involved would be new drainage pipes, and then we did put quite a bit of gravel out there, but you need to have additional gravel and then a final wearing coat. Some of the unknowns that we're not sure about, and this would be for Attorney Fisher, would be whether if we were removing trees in this stretch of roadway, if that would be an Act 250 issue or not. This is to contract the work out. This would not be having Public Works do the work itself, although we would have some labor involved with our engineering to certainly make sure that the road was brought up to our standards, some manpower there. But the majority of this would be to hire it out and to have it done. The pricing was obtained by contractors and unit prices that they use currently. That's how we developed the pricing. And so that's kind of the long and short of it. I'm here to answer any questions that you may have, or how we got to where we got, or anything else that the board would like.
Did you guys get copies? Okay, I wanted to make sure you had any.
Do you have any questions or comments for Steve? And if you would come up to the mic and...
Hi, Jeff Burgess from Brattleboro Road. First, Steve, thank you for time in your crew that you put into doing the study. So I guess I don't know much about road work. I guess I was shocked or surprised with the number. It seemed a lot for a road that's less than a mile long and relatively flat. So I guess my first question, I really have two questions tonight. My first question is there anything the residents can do to help offset the costs in any particular way? I'm not sure, but so that's one thing I'd like to hear a little bit more about, if there's anything we can do. And then second, this obviously will be a cost to the town, and I'm just curious, is there any formula or any way that there may also, though, be some benefit to the town, I might imagine. I mean, I don't know much about this kind of stuff, but it would probably increase town, the land values, and then the taxes would go up, and possibly for more development. So is there any process by which both, not simply the cost, but also the benefits of a project like this is done in turn, any kind of analysis in that way? So I guess I throw that out to people here who might know more about it than I do. But anyway, is there anything the town residents can do?
I'll take on the first question. I think it might be limited, although I guess there are possibilities. When we break down the item list, there's again, I think some of the higher cost items are to remove the trees and the stumps and those type of activities. And I don't know what type of relationship we could enter into in a situation like that on town property, if a contract could be developed, or if you're going to try to offset the cost by doing some of the task. Or if you could get better pricing than I don't know. That'd be another method. But most of this type of work is pretty straightforward as far as the actual work to be done. And then the unit price on the gravel, there may be some savings when we buy this amount of gravel or when we hire somebody because of purchasing in bulk. But other than that, I don't see too many areas where you could participate to lower the cost. Unless that when we haven't even got to the decision process on how this would be done, unless you were able to take the specifications and possibly, again, get better pricing.
Okay, just another thought. The first half of the road gets a lot more wear. Is it possible that, and in fact, I think the first half of the road is wider than the second half. Is it possible that only the part of the road would then be upgraded? I mean, isn't that what happened? Aren't there other town roads like Stark Road that part of it's Class 3 and part of it's Class 4?
That's right. There are. And again, any place that we upgrade a road, and improve it from a Class 4 to Class 3, we want the minimum, and we'd be required to. And I advise the board not to accept a road unless it did meet the specifications. In this particular road, what's being requested is only a portion, even though the bridges are out further up. This is being considered to leave a section of Class 4 road, and Starks Road is currently a section of it's Class 3 and a section of it is 4.
Holiday Brook.
Holiday Brook. I keep going back and
Yeah,
forth.
you keep doing that. Yeah.
But Starks Road is, Starks Road actually has a section of the Class 3 and Class 4.
We'll wait until those neighbors come.
Yeah. I'm encouraging, I guess.
Do any board members have any questions about this?
Yep. Yeah, Steve, how wide is that road now? You said you would have to be widened to 14 feet. What is it now, roughly? Really, roughly?
It's the existing road is, well, we just drove it. It's not much more than probably 12
No, I doubt it, yeah.
in places, in sections. Well, in other places, it's probably 8 foot wide, but, yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Good for you.
Right now, the town does not maintain that road?
The town does not maintain the roadway.
It's maintained by the homeowners along
That's
it?
right.
Okay. How much do you estimate the town would have to spend on maintenance if the town were to upgrade that to Class 3?
Roughly. I looked at that, I haven't really done an estimate, but once the roadway was completed, the plowing, certainly every storm we'd be plowing this additional amount of roadway. There's a cost associated with that. I don't have good numbers on that. A new road like this with new drainage, even though it's dirt, I wouldn't consider it high maintenance as far as some of the other dirt roads that require, during mud season, a lot of additional work. This would be newer and not require a lot of mud season recovery type work. But it would be required, as all our other Class 3 dirt roads, to be graded and chlorided. So there's other expenditures that would go along with it.
Wouldn't the question for plowing, snow plowing, I mean, as long as the piece of equipment that does Sunset Lake Road can do that road, that would...
It would just
Yeah,
take
it
on
would
that
just-
extra stretch. I mean,
Okay,
in
so-
dollars, it wouldn't seem really high at first. I mean, it would be down the road when you had to re-gravel the whole roadway. 15 years from now, if you built it, you'd have to add gravel. And again, you'd be grading it, and then chloride, when we go through the budget, that's also a discussion of, to keep the dust down and to keep the road nice and solid. So there's costs associated with it, but they're not that high.
Okay, thanks.
Bobby, let me ask you a question about process. I've said we discussed this in the capital plan. Do we have to take action on whether we want to adopt this as an upgrade before we put it in the capital plan, or could we put it in the capital plan, put it in there for discussion, and then would we have to take action prior to that being adopted?
Process-wise, you have two choices right now. One, you can have a petition by 5% to ask you to take over the road, or the board on its own motion can take that action and go through the laying out process for not taking over the road, but upgrading the road from Class 4 to Class 3, okay? My recommendation would be to, not knowing what the answer to that is, whether you put that in a capital plan or not, that's really up to you. You certainly wouldn't be able to have any definitive action on the capital plan until you took action on upgrading the road.
So in reality, we need to take some sort of action
Well, it
on the
certainly
request.
seems prudent to do that from the legal standpoint as far as whether it's going to be a Class 3 road. And if you do decide to upgrade it, if you do that with conditions that this is what it's going to cost, then that goes into your capital plan.
Well, I don't think that we're ready to, this evening, to take this up in terms of action, but having heard that, I believe that we should put it on our agenda for our next meeting for the board to take action, because the alternative would be, if the board turns this down, the residents have the right to petition as a second alternative, correct?
I thought I understood that the petition process is 5% of the residents or 5% of the voters. Not just the landowner, not just the people.
No, that's
So they got the alternative now.
Well, yes,
To
they
try
do.
to start collecting 5%
Right.
of voters or residents to try to put this on the agenda. I think it's premature for us to put this on the agenda again for another meeting until we have some sense of what we're going to be asked to spend this coming year. I don't want to be deciding whether we want to upgrade this road from Class 4 to Class 3 without knowing what all the budget requests are going to be, including all the Irene-related costs.
I would agree with David. I mean, I think it should just be added to the list of budget things to discuss in the budget discussions.
Barb?
Because I haven't experienced this before, we've taken over roads before and we've thrown up roads, but I haven't done a reclassification. If a board decides to upgrade the road, I mean, that decision is always made prior to the work being done. But is there, I would assume that at some point, if you upgrade, you say you upgrade the road, when you're doing the reports into the state, you're reporting that as whatever class of road you've reclassified it to, and so the work would have to begin relatively immediately, relatively soon after the vote. Is that correct?
That's correct, and
Mainly just because of reporting requirements to the state, and how we report to the state our mileage by classifications.
because when you really come down to it, if you're going to have the determination to upgrade, you're needing to find that that's in the public good, public necessity, and public convenience to
Right.
upgrade the road. And you're assuming that were the decision, you can always make various conditions as to how it's going to be upgraded and who pays for it, or a combination thereof. But just for clarity, if you are putting this on a subsequent agenda, that's not the hearing on the upgrade. That would be on your agenda as to whether the board on its own motion will be then setting the process into motion.
Right.
Just to clarify.
Because once that vote is taken, then the board,
Then we have
Then
to do the notice, and to the landowners, have the site visit, very similar to what
correct.
you did tonight.
Okay.
And the sentiment of the board, when we have two board members and probably more concerned about the budgetary process.
Just two?
Well, I'm saying more than two, but two who have been vocal here this evening. Having this move forward through this process, would the recommendation to the residents, to a more prudent way for them to go would be to try to get 5% of the voters? Or do we stick this in, just these numbers, into the budgetary discussion and see where they fall? I mean, is that an option for us? And if the board feels compelled that it wants to move in that direction, then we go forward with the process at hand in terms of public hearing, site visit, et cetera.
If I may, I believe that the decision of whether to upgrade the road is based on factors different from budget.
That's correct.
So
you're
you really should separate those two.
You're talking apples and oranges
Right.
here, and as far as whether to advise the residents of the
They can do
road,
what they want, really.
I mean, my job is to advise
That's right.
the town. We're not really, and I don't, no disrespect intended, but they certainly have the option to get the petition in, and then the board must go through the process. So
Okay.
that is an opportunity that the residents have.
Okay.
Well, speaking as a board member, I don't think I'm ready to entertain having the board make its own motion. I'm just not. We haven't even begun to do the budget yet, and we already know what kinds of challenges we'd have. I think it would be unfair to the residents to raise their hopes at a time when we've already said that we expect a challenging budget year.
Any further comment? Comment from the public? Yes.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Clark from Hollywood Road, and in regards to the budget, I just wanted to reiterate what I said last meeting, was the fact that with Class 4, there's not state funding to help with the road, and if it was Class 3, there is money that the town does receive from the state level to help pay, as far as I was understanding. And again, with the budget being difficult, it was very grateful of you all to spend $36,000 to upgrade a road to where it's at. And it's concerning with these weather conditions. I mean, what did we get, 18 inches of snow? I mean, on top of Irene, it's like, what else can we take in it? It just seems like a concern to us with weather, and getting support federally and statewide. If you upgrade the road, that you would have that bit of insurance that the road would be, you'd get funds to help keep the road upgraded, to get the emergency vehicles and such out to us. If some other catastrophe does hit Brattleboro, let's hope it doesn't. But we just thought, I'd add that in, and again, the increased tax value, hopefully our properties would bring to help with the grand list. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I mean, obviously at this point, you've heard what I've heard, and there isn't a lot of support to move forward at this moment on this issue. Again, you do have an option that you can follow, and at this point, I think we're not going to take any action. We certainly wouldn't be taking any action here this evening. We will probably continue to discuss this, and I actually want to talk to Bobby a little bit more, and so I'm clearly understanding the process a little bit better in terms of moving forward. So, and I thank you for your request. I mean, you understand the logistics of everything that's going on, and the monetary pressures that we have before us in a unique year that, here we have a storm happening on the weekend with people going out plowing. Affects your budgets a month and a half before you think you're going to have overtime and salting and sanding and everything else. So I'm not making excuses, but you're certainly well aware of what's before us. So thank you.
Next is the first reading for an ordinance change. This came before the traffic safety, was approved and forwarded on to the select board. It's a simple change. It would be adding Paul's Road to the list of no parking areas in town. And it would be on either side of Paul's Road, the whole length thereof. And again, would just be a first reading. And that was it. I just did it.
All right.
Oh, yeah. Well, it changes the numbers, because you added them. Okay. Next, the board is, Steve's still up here to ask the board to accept and appropriate a grant from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns through their passive scholarship program for the game of logging training. This would be in the amount of $2,400. Steve, do you want to talk about your games?
Yeah, this is actually a really important course, and the people that we've sent to this course have come back. People have used chainsaws and been working around trees for years, learned a lot. They actually were able to have the instructor come here to Brattleboro and actually go into the watershed area, and they'll actually take trees down in the watershed area, selected trees, and they show the workers proper techniques on how to fell these trees. So it's pretty good, because we don't have a lot of money in our training account, and this is funded 100%, and this will get between 8 and 10 of our employees fully trained and certified. So.
Very good. A motion?
Move to approve $2,400 grant from the VLCT PACIF to train staff on chainsaw safety.
Further discussion?
I just think it's great.
Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
4-0. Opposed, 4-0. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you for this evening, assisting us also.
And the last on the agenda is, on this agenda right now, is the flood update. just to talk a little bit about what we've been doing. Steve can probably give you a little update since he's still sitting here.
I do have a few projects that I want the public
Great.
to be aware of.
Go ahead, you start.
Okay. As we continue to clean up and repair after the damage from Irene, of course, the snowstorm didn't help any of the projects because it kind of delayed all the contractors, but everybody's back to work this week, reassembling and trying to finish up some of these projects. The three projects that we have are the sewer trestle that went out in West Brattleboro, and this is the main sewer line from West Brattleboro. Permanent sewer main will be put in and a new trestle on Monday the 7th, starting around 6 a.m. And that's going to take most of the day. All the wastewater will bypass it and put a pumping system in. Then Renault Brothers have assembled a new trestle, and that will all be put in one piece. So it's quite a big job, but that'll be completed on the 7th. In the Whetstone Brook itself, upstream of the Whetstone pathway, we have a broken sewer line. It has been broken for some time. We have a temporary patch on it. The crews, Zaluzny Construction, will be working in the stream on Wednesday the 9th to make a final repair on that sewer main. This is the same sewer main that takes all the wastewater from the west end of town. So that should be repaired on Wednesday the 9th. The Meadowbrook Road Bridge, just upstream of that bridge, we also have a sewer line that is exposed and needs to have larger rock put against it, which we commonly call armor, to protect it. And that'll also take place next week. All these projects do have stream permits, and we've had a site visit with the Natural Resources, and we've been given approval to work in these areas, because there's a higher level of alert for people that are in the streams. So we have paid attention to that, and we do have our permits. So the last but not leastly is the Stark Road Bridge. The abutments have been poured, and Renault I haven't contacted him today, but we're hoping here within the next couple of weeks that structure will be completed. There's quite a bit of work to do there as far as putting the deck on itself and then doing some more backfilling, but at least the abutments and they're in place, so we're hoping that will take place soon. And that'll be really the final project for us. Well, I was going to say before snow, but...
Okay, and Barb?
Okay, and, well, Steve's been dealing with the projects. We've had several meetings over the last couple of weeks. We've met with Brattleboro Housing Authority staff representatives and some of their commissioners, along with representatives from HUD and FEMA, to discuss some possible situations at Melrose, and also some of the Hayes Court project that they've recently put on hold. On Friday, met with two representatives from Tri-Park. Dora was in that meeting as well, and a representative from SEVCA, or two representatives from SEVCA, to discuss continued assistance at Tri-Park to try to figure out a little bit better, what are some of their immediate needs, what are some of their longer-term needs, and how can we help some of the people that are still living there but who are looking to make changes. How do we help them get to the assistance that they need? Today, I attended a meeting in Mount Snow with representatives from the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, and the majority of the discussion there really centered on kind of long-term impacts and long-term strategies to deal with some of the fallout from this. One of the scarier kind of statistics is that after an event like this, when you have a number of businesses that are impacted negatively, that the loss of businesses is actually tends in the upcoming year tends to grow, because if you have problems in one area of town, those tend to translate into problems in other areas of town. Brattleboro is a particular concern in our downtown area right now, mainly because we already had a reduced foot traffic due to the Brooks House fire, and now we have kind of got the other end of the town hit with the Elliott, or Flat Street. Continuing to try to figure out how we can help and how we can keep track of people's needs and businesses' needs. On Thursday, we have a meeting with representatives from A&R. We're going to be looking at the whetstone. We're going to be looking at possible what things maybe we should be doing now with the whetstone, what things we know that maybe we could do as far as hazard mitigation grants. I'll talk about that in a little bit more. One of the other things that came out today, kind of in the meeting, Chris Campen, Executive Director of the Wyndham Regional Commission, was at the meeting with the Secretary of Commerce, and one of the things that was noted was that the storm, and we've talked about this a little bit too, the storm has really drastically altered how our brooks and rivers respond and react to rain and any kind of rainfall. We know ourselves that twice now since the flooding, we've had water going across Route 9. Leader Home Center has had to redo their front about 3 times now. And so there really are changes. One of the things that the Regional Planning Commission has looked at is some infrared maps of where old stream beds lay, and that what they found when they looked at some of the flooding from Irene is that a lot of the brooks and streams really were resorting back to their old stream beds. And that's why you have some of the flooding where you look and you say, oh, wow, hasn't flooded there, and it's like, well, it probably did flood there before. That's also an indication of the next several months. There's a high concern in the state with regard to what's going to happen when we get into some of the thaw and the summer snow thaws, when we with the ice jams that we may have. And so there really, he was actually, it was a pretty doomsday message with regard to the potential for, again, increased flooding again from where we're at now. And I think one of the things that staff has talked about, emergency response staff has talked about, is the unpredictability right now of our brooks, particularly the whetstone. When we have rain, the last couple of rains we've had, and we've had some substantial rainfall, but the rapid rise in the whetstone we haven't seen that for really many years. And again, the flooding across Route 9, Steve, I think that's a pretty unusual.
It just seems any time we have any rain, that the whetstone reacts to it so quickly now, that everything's so saturated that it's unpredictable.
One of the other issues that we have is we know that there's still debris in the whetstone. We know that there's still trees that are down. We know that we're not going to get into those. We're not going to get those out. And that is, again, another hazard that we have moving forward into the winter, and when we move into the spring thaws and ice jams, because those are going to cause issues for us then. So again, mainly I say this so that we, kind of have it in our heads that, the future may look a little different than what we're used to over the past several years, but also so that people are mindful and watchful during rain events and further on into the winter when we have somewhat forgotten about Irene, that the impacts will still be here. We too have switched into the long-term, looking long-term at situations and how we respond. We're working on hazard mitigation grants right now. This is an opportunity. The state is getting several $1 million worth of FEMA dollars for the funding of hazard mitigation grants. We were to have had a meeting last Friday with the staff to talk more about hazard mitigation. I was hoping to have a better list for the board tonight, but we spent most of our time at the fire on Friday, so that actually we did not have that meeting. But we do have a number of mitigation projects that we're looking at. Some of the benign, such as looking at some of the culverts. I know, Steve, you probably have a better idea of some of the
We're going to look at a lot
infrastructure.
of the box culverts, bridges, and culverts that we can replace to prevent further damage, or places that had damage that if we improve the culverts, the roadway, and the drainage, that it will prevent future incidences. We've done that before.
Right.
Those would be the big things we'd be looking at. It's basically smaller bridges and box culverts.
And again, that's why we are meeting with A&R to see if there are some, is there some possible mitigation that we can do along the whetstone? But again, that's going to be a little bit more of an involved project. One thing that comes up when you talk about hazard mitigation, and it was brought up and discussed in length today at the meeting, is acquisition. Acquisition of property under the hazard grant mitigation. I just want to talk about that a little bit. That is a totally voluntary program by property owners. Acquisition is not something that is done by the municipality. All hazard mitigation grants are, the applicant is always the town. It's only municipalities that are eligible for these. However, the towns can apply for grants on behalf of other businesses if there's some mitigation that needs to be done, or we can apply for an acquisition in which the town would acquire property, buy property, essentially. But I want to again stress that is totally that's totally done by property owners have to want to sell. Typically, it is a sale of last resort. It is what you see when you have properties that are substantially damaged over that 50% of the value of the properties, and they've gotten what they can from insurance, they've gotten what they can from FEMA individual assistance, and they are sitting with a property that, you know, for instance, your house is gone, your house has been gone down the river, you have a mortgage on your house, you have gotten something from insurance, you've gotten something from FEMA, but you still owe. It's essentially a buyer of last resorts in some ways, because it is a 75-25 split. Any project that we do with hazard mitigation is a 75% hazard mitigation grant, 25% match. Typically, when you're in a purchasing process or an acquisition, you might not, the town probably would not necessarily use the 25 match. That would just be, again, part of what the property owner would do. But we're finding out more and more about that. There are many towns that are looking at this, particularly, again, when you have, again, it's the kind of last resort. We have been, Patrick's been doing most of the research on this, and we've had some discussions with Bob Fisher that if there would be anything like that, again, it would be a very public process and would require, we believe would require, or we would probably want a representative town meeting approval on anything like that. So just started to get we're starting to get more questions on that, and so just trying to get some information out on that. But at this point, we're really focusing on our own infrastructure grant applications and trying to get those things. The deadline is letters of intent are December 31st, and the actual application is due January 20th. We do have to do a benefit cost analysis, and there is a training on that next Tuesday Patrick's already attended one of those trainings. Patrick and John attended a training up in Rutland on that, or somewhere. And I'll be attending the training on Tuesday on the 8th. And it sounds really fascinating. Does anybody wants to join me? So, at this point, the major concerns that I have right now are persons that are eligible for independent or individual assistance that have not continued to go through the process, that have either not applied yet for the FEMA, that have applied and been denied, and again, there's, or applied and been denied, and reapplied and been denied again, and trying to reach those people. I want to make sure that people understand that individual assistance is for renters as well. If you're a renter and you are displaced from your home and you are eligible for rental assistance, they've extended that for up to an 18-month period. And I want to make sure that people understand we have until November 15th to get that application in, that first application into FEMA, and it is well worth the time. And if people need further information, they should feel free to call the town offices. There are people, Windsor Wyndham Housing Trust, they have caseworkers that they've been utilizing for people to help them through some of this process. And also to remind people that the Windsor Wyndham Housing Trust, some of their programs, depending on what kind of housing you might be going into, they've lifted some of their income requirements. The other issue, the other concern that we have that we need to keep in the front of our heads is that businesses, and again, them getting the assistance. They are getting assistance through the Small Business Association. It is a cumbersome process. Every application that goes into the small business application will initially be denied. And that is from the person who works with us in the Small Business Administration. So again, it takes some amount of diligence and some amount of commitment to that process. But that is an opportunity. Also, there are VETA loans that are still out there, or grants that are still out there, and really encouraging folks to take advantage of those. Again, if they've not, that too has the November 15th deadline. At this point, we have about a 20% for businesses, in Windham County, about 20% application rate. And that is we are behind where we should be at this point. We've got 2 weeks to go. And that may just be because some people have decided they're not returning. It may be because they've decided to do it on their own. But there's a lot of information we don't have and we don't know. So with that, I am going to be looking to see if I can find a volunteer to help with coordination of some of this, trying to reach out to the people to the residents, to the citizens, and also to the businesses, so that they can get some of the assistance that they need, because it is relatively a maze for some people. But there is assistance out there.
Thank you. Dora?
Well, I learned today that they're still getting 30 applications a day over at FEMA, and they are closing the Dover office, I guess, after Thursday.
After Thursday, yeah.
I just wanted to report on, I did catch the end of the Human Services Committee meeting, which I volunteered to serve on the advisory board.
You listened today too, didn't you?
You were on the phone. I came in at the end, but so they've sort of come to agreement on mission and what the committee's going to be, and they're getting closer to coming with a structure to how to decide how to allocate the funding that they have. So that's good.
All right. I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss 2 civil matters, 1 labor matter, and 1 personnel matter.
Move to enter executive session to discuss 2 civil matters, labor relations matter and personal matter where the town has determined that premature public disclosure would leave the town at a substantial disadvantage. And I invite town attorney Bob Fisher, Patrick Moreland, and Barb Sondag into the meeting.
And I'll accept the motion on that. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 4-0. And I don't anticipate any action coming out of executive session.
Thanks, Steve.